What if 1 year abroad could change your life and someone else's forever? In today's episode, we're exploring the Fulbright Program, one of the most prestigious international exchange opportunities available to students. But we're not just talking logistics. You'll hear real stories from real people. A Thai American Fulbright grantee teaching in rural Thailand, and a representative from Fulbright Lotus, a program helping underrepresented students thrive abroad during their time as a Fulbright. You'll learn what it really takes to apply, the daily life as a Fulbright, and how your identity can be your strength, not your barrier. Whether you're AAPI, a first-gen student, or just curious about teaching or studying abroad, this episode is for you. Subscribe and stick around till the end of the episode to discover how Fulbright might be your ticket to the world and a more global version of yourself. Welcome to the New College Perspective. I'm your host, Jerica, coming to you with tea in hand at 9 a.m. local time. But our first guest today is experiencing a completely different part of her day. Kate, where in the world are you joining us from?
Hi, Jerica. Coming from Bangkok, Thailand right now. So it's my evening, your morning, but I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. And I feel like that time difference alone should show us just how global the Fulbright program is. And we're also joined by Kelly, who is a prior Fulbrighter who served in Brazil as an English teaching assistant and currently serves on the Fulbright Lotus leadership team, and will share how students from underrepresented backgrounds can make Fulbright their reality. Kelly, welcome to the New College Perspective.
Hi, Jerica. Thanks so much for having us.
For people who maybe haven't heard much about Fulbright before, how would you describe the program in your own words?
Yeah. So the Fulbright is a U.S. government-funded international exchange program for students, scholars, and even young professionals. And it gives them a chance to study, teach, or do research abroad. But I think the whole idea of the Fulbright is to build mutual understanding between the U.S. and other countries around the world through sharing experiences and learning from each other.
Okay, Kelly. So if our listeners open up the website, which we'll have here on the screen, to learn more about Fulbright, what additional things should they focus on when determining if they should indeed apply?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things to consider. I think the first is if you have the language requirements that certain host countries need in terms of proficiency and whether you are able to succeed there and even apply. The second is the length of grant, because some grants, and depending on the program, can range from 9 months to a year to even 2 years. So really look into how long the program you're looking into is.
There's not just one way to do Fulbright, right? There are options to teach and research and study. Can you help break down for those different types of Fulbright opportunities, how you chose the ETA, the English teaching assistantship?
Okay, yeah, totally. So there are 3 options. Like you said, there's graduate studies, there's research, and there's English teaching. And all of them are available. It depends on what country. You can find that on the official website. All that's listed. Mm-hmm. Each grant is really different in its own way. For example, my Thailand grant, we serve for about a year, so 12 months, because we do the last semester, summer break for 2 months, and the first semester. And during that summer break, we're given 1 month of travel and then 1 month of an internship of your choice within Thailand. So these little things are different within each program, so I would really look into it. But I ended up with an ETA position, honestly, process of elimination. I didn't know if I wanted to go to graduate school yet, and I didn't have anything I was passionate enough to research about. And so ETA was what I ended up on. And it sounds really anticlimactic to say it like that, but it's how it worked. And I actually never saw myself doing this. I went to school for computer science, so it didn't seem like a step that really made sense to go straight to English teaching abroad in a different country. But I knew that the office life needs to wait. I'm not ready for that type of tedium and repetition yet. I wanted to try something new. And so I got an email from my university. It was super generic, sent to probably 3,000 people. And I was like, this is for me. This is a sign and I am going to take it. And I've loved it ever since.
Is this like your junior year or your senior year when you applied to this? Because like for some of our students that are just like, was the best time to start applying?
Yeah.
When
So
was it for you?
it's such an early process. It's the
Mm.
summer going into your senior year.
Oh,
So your
wow.
junior
So
year, your
now.
spring
Uh-huh.
junior year, I got this email and it was like, show if you're interested, start your application now. So it didn't feel written in stone in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I'm sending off this application. I'm working on it throughout the summer while I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
And you send it off and you forget about it. You can go on with
Mm-hmm.
your regular applications, you can go on with your regular studies, and the day that you hear back, you kind of forgot you even applied. So it didn't feel very scary to apply in that sense
Mm-hmm.
because I knew whether it happened or not, it wasn't detrimental to my future in any way.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think that's good for our listeners that are juniors to start thinking about, okay, we just finished the semester, your junior year. Hurrah. Now it's the summer. Maybe you don't get that wonderful email that Kate got, but you can go and reach out and see about some Fulbright opportunities that are out there. So, Kelly, a lot of our listeners wonder if they even qualify for a program like this. What are some of the basic eligibility criteria for them? What part of the application process was most challenging for you?
Yeah, at the most basic level, you just
Mhm.
need to be a US citizen and hold a bachelor's degree at the time that you start your grant. So, like Kate was mentioning, she applied her junior year summer,
Mhm.
and the grant starts the following year after she graduates from college. So by then, hopefully, she'll have she would have had her bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
Um, but I would also say you can apply after you graduate too. You don't have to apply
Okay.
um, that junior year summer because I know some people in my cohort applied after doing a Peace Corps, after doing
Mhm.
some time in the corporate world and wanted a break. So it doesn't have to be immediately after college. And I think the most challenging part for my application process for
Mhm.
me was narrowing down my ideas of like where I wanted to go because Fulbright you could essentially apply to anywhere they have a program in the world. So it was really hard for me to be
Hmm.
like, oh, I want to spend 9 months here because I would go anywhere really.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yeah, so I think in the application process, you really have to explain your narrative and make sure your narrative follows in line with the country that you selected. Because for me, I chose Brazil because I started learning Portuguese in college,
Mm.
and I was supposed to study abroad in Mozambique, but because of the
Mhm.
pandemic, I wasn't able to go. So it narrowed my search down a little bit in terms of me wanting to go to a Portuguese speaking country, but
Mhm.
still there's a lot of Lusophone countries around the world, and I thought I needed to make it a more compelling story and narrative.
Mhm.
And that's where I brought in a personal story of mine where I had a conversation partner in college who was Brazilian, and
Mm.
she was really the first person to open up my eyes to a whole culture. Because in undergrad, I studied Spanish and knew about Latin America, but
Mhm.
Brazil is so different compared to the rest of Latin America, just in terms of
Mhm.
language and culture and things like that, um, that it wasn't really on my radar. So I think tying that personal story into my application really helped build that connection and tie to the country itself.
Yeah. And so basically, you're saying that for Fulbright, you only pick one country. You go in, you apply to one country. How did you determine which one to go for? Are you kind of like saying, okay, how much experience? I have this amount of experience, especially if you're going after the English teaching assistantship. How are you determining which application to submit? Because I'm feeling like, okay, our students might like, I want to go to two countries. What's your guys' advice on that?
Yeah. So on the Fulbright website, they have, I know this is horrible, but they have the statistics of how many applicants they have and how many they
Uh-huh.
receive. So,
So smart.
yeah, so it like when I applied, I definitely looked at it because Brazil has a bigger cohort. It had about 80 students that
Hmm.
are able to get the grant. So I was like, oh, my numbers chances in my head, that makes sense. Um, but I wouldn't deter you to apply to like a really small country with some lesser grants because you could still have a compelling story to that. But in my head, I was like, oh, that seemed like my best shot. I don't remember the Mozambique number, but I don't think it was as large as Brazil.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a thing I took into account.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great advice. Like looking at the applicant number and kind of looking at your chances. For you, Kate, like, was that the same thing for you? Like when you were, I know you eventually applied to Thailand, but was there another country that you were looking to apply to? Students that are kind of in that, like, I'm not sure which one, advice on that for them.
I kind of went the same route as Kelly. Honestly,
Yeah.
I looked at the numbers because as much as you're choosing a country, they're going to have to choose you back, right? So it is a numbers game to a point because they have to think that you're the best fit for their culture, or you really want to learn from that culture also. So funny enough, I was between Thailand and Mauritius. Little Thailand.
Wow.
Yeah. So very far away.
Very different. Yes. So I'm like, wait, we just like, yanked halfway across the world.
You would think maybe another Southeast Asian country. No, I wanted to be somewhere else. And I just, like, I talked to people that were in the Fulbright during the time that I was looking into it, which I cannot recommend enough. I think hearing that perspective, I talked to someone who was absolutely in love with this Thailand program, and that completely sold me to choose Thailand. Because to hear how excited she was about this program that she was still partaking in, it wasn't rosy colored glasses. It wasn't in the past.
Yeah.
It was, she was living in it, and she couldn't say a single bad thing about the program. And that was really eye-opening. And I thought, that's how I want to feel a year from now.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Although this is good. So the applications, and then you talked about talking to people that are currently serving. How did you get a hold of people to talk to? Like if a student is interested in doing that, where would they go to get that ability to talk to someone?
Scour the internet. I remember.
What was your process? Yes.
It was a lot of Reddit links, you can find a list of past grantees, and from those names, you just kind of do your own background research. You go to LinkedIn, you go to Instagrams, you reach out. If there's anyone from your university that has served prior in that country that you're interested in, I would reach out to maybe your Office of Education Abroad or someone else, I guess, that you could maybe find a link to that student. That's what I ended up doing. I was fortunate enough to have someone at Villanova who was serving that year. So I was able to find contact through the Office of Education and gave her a call on WhatsApp. But it was possible. I mean, shoot out some emails, some cold calls. It happens.
Yeah.
And I think everyone in this program really does want to share their experience, whether positive or negative, to just enlighten other people who are thinking of applying.
Yeah. No, I think this is good. And the last question I have about this part, because I think a lot of students do feel a little bit nervous about the essay. And so Kelly already talked to us about like making it personal, pulling different ideas from things that you've experienced. Any other additional tips for writing the essay that students might find helpful for it to be picked? Because you both obviously got selected. So
I think the hardest thing is getting words down at first. Like, so I know Kate mentioned the Office of Education at Villanova. At my university, at Virginia Commonwealth University, we had an office called the National Scholarship Office. And they helped tremendously in my process because they helped through even talking about Fulbright, like getting it out there, but through the application process and drafting it and revising it too. So I think the hardest part is getting words on a paper, and then because there is a word limit, right? Word count. So, but it's easier to take away words than to put words in. So I think just putting it out there at first and then cutting it back to see like if it actually fits in and makes it a seamless thread throughout the application. That would be my biggest thing. And then another tip I would have is offer people to read it over and review it, but take advice with a grain of salt because it is your personal story. So you don't need to take everything that everyone says to heart. I think everyone wants the best, hopefully, for you. You could pick and choose what advice you want to keep and change in your application.
And then for you, Kate, kind of what advice would you have for students that are writing the essay?
I echo everything that Kelly said, but I would also say be annoying. If you want to ask for help from someone, I was fortunate enough to have a writing center. So I felt that if I kept going to them with the same essay where I've tweaked 2 words and I don't know what else to write, that they were going to hate me and they're going to think I'm annoying. That's it. Like, they want to help. They were
Yes.
so willing to sit down with me for an hour and a half and just,
Mhm.
okay, let's fix this. I don't know what you're
Mhm.
saying right here. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm
Mhm.
saying either. Thank you so much. Don't be afraid to be annoying, and like really ask
Mhm.
for help if you think that you want that guidance and you think you need that guidance. That was something
Mhm.
that I
Mhm.
had to push past, and I am so grateful I did.
Yeah, and I think that like when they feel this annoyance, like okay, or it's not even. Sometimes people feel like they're being annoying. Sometimes people are like nervous. I always tell students, you've paid for them. Like with your tuition, your expensive tuition, that money is built in to paying their salaries, and so by you not using them, you're just giving them free money.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sometimes helps people feel like, oh yeah, sure, I need to use my money. Here you are. But I think that's really good advice going to your writing center. Okay. I always like to ask this question for both of you guys. Where were you when you got accepted? And what was the first thought that ran through your head when you got the acceptance? Like, who did you tell?
I was in my bedroom. It was a
Mm-hmm.
time difference. So I was actually in Australia with my family, and it was sent to me at around 4 a.m. So I woke up at 8 and I was like, email, I missed it. Like, I don't know what's going on. Found out,
Yeah.
cried a little, got excited, told my parents. That was it.
That's super cool. Okay. And then you, Kelly, where were you?
For me, so I graduated undergrad a semester early in December 2020. And then
Mhm.
the semester off, I was like, I don't know what to do. So I ended up working back at my aunt's 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
So I was at my shift at 7-Eleven and I got the email and I had to, and I was like almost shocked because I wasn't expecting it. It was
Yeah.
maybe late April, March. With the Brazilian cohort, you like start a little later because they're in the southern hemisphere, so the schooling
Yeah.
system's a little different. So I got this email saying like, oh, I'll go to Brazil in another 9 months. So I had to wait another
Yeah.
9 months, right? But I couldn't process it at the time. It was like very shocking to be at 7-Eleven on my shift and then to continue my shift after.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And I think the first person I told, I think I dropped in the family group chat of my siblings and I. So yeah, I let them know.
You're like, you should have told the person that was coming to buy something at the 7-Eleven, like, guess what? Yeah, I'm going in 9 months. In 9 months. Kate, so you got in. Obviously, you're in Thailand. So let's talk about, for our listeners, I want them to hear what happens when you actually arrive in your host country. You've been living right now in rural part of Thailand, teaching students grades 7 to 12. So can you paint us a picture of what a typical day looks like for you? What's been the most rewarding part about your time there? And maybe what's been like the hardest part of adjusting there? Anything you want to share with us? We just want to go on
Yeah,
this adventure with you.
sure. Okay, I'll try to be as descriptive as possible. Wake up 6:30. Um, I'll usually have to get to school around 7:30. That's when there is school-wide morning announcements. My host teacher, every person in the cohort is given a host teacher.
Hmm.
So that person is the person who's responsible for telling you your duties, translating a lot of things, because a lot of the cohort can't speak Thai. And
Mhm.
so my host teacher, kind enough, beautiful, wonderful lady, practically my Thai mother. She drives me to school every morning, 7:30. I'm there, and each day I'll teach about 3 classes, 3 hours worth of classes. And so the 3 classes will be spread out throughout the day. We go to lunch at the cafeteria. I'm surrounded by the kids constantly, but
Mhm.
as a Fulbright grantee in Thailand, you're not allowed more than 18 hours of work, of teaching per
Hmm.
week. So
Mhm.
that really leads to a lot of free time in between
Mhm.
classes. And
Mhm.
during this free time, which takes up most of my day, I'll play with the kids. Any
Mhm.
students that aren't in classes will play soccer out by the field. They
Mhm.
teach me a lot of Thai games that I can never remember, and they yell at me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But you're there to converse, you're there to share culture.
Yeah.
And then you ask, what's the most rewarding? Teaching. I didn't
Hmm.
know that I was going to love teaching the way that I do. I
Hmm.
could be having the
Hmm.
worst day ever,
Mhm.
walk into a classroom, and I would qualify as the happiest girl in Thailand afterwards. These kids just light up my life, and
Mm-hmm.
just seeing them so excited about friendships and drama
Mm-hmm.
and whatever high
Mm-hmm.
schoolers are into nowadays. They're just so excited to be there and to be surrounded by people who want them to be there. It's really
Yeah.
exciting every single day. This year, I'm implementing a Formula One club at my school.
Oh,
I love
cool.
Love that.
love Formula One. So
Yeah.
that's something that now that I've got my feet kind of on the ground, I'm trying to work with government facilities here, the sport authorities, all that good stuff. So really it's anything that you want. And some people, art club, it doesn't have to be related to English if you don't want it to be.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. That it's like the mutual understanding doesn't just have to come in the classroom. It can come in varying forms. You're learning about different cultures, and that culture is also learning about you. So you also mentioned when we were preparing for this episode that this experience has taught you how much joy there is in the mundane. Can you share what that's meant for you, or kind of expand on that thought?
Yeah. So you've mentioned it. I lived in a very rural placement, so there
Mhm.
wasn't really much to do, and I wasn't expecting
Mhm.
it. So there was the school and there was my house and not much
Mhm.
else. Those are just the
Mhm.
two places I could be, and that was something very new to me, living in cities my
Mhm.
whole life. And I struggled with this up until probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, where
Mhm.
I then met a group of neighborhood 7-year-olds who drive me insane and are just the greatest people I've ever met. Their names are Connie, Fluke, Carter, and Titan. And every single day after school, they would bike to my house or walk to my house and we would just play, building kites out of trash bags.
This is so rural.
So rural. And we would bike to the Lotus Lake that was nearby. And it was
Mm.
just
Mhm.
so much joy. And it made me so appreciative of every single thing that I do and
Mhm.
realize that I don't need a lot to have
Mhm.
this much fun. And so
Mhm.
the way that I phrase it is kind of, you know how everyone says live like it's your last life or do it
Yeah.
like it's your last time.
Uh-huh.
I've
Uh-huh.
kind of gained the perspective of do it like it's your very first. Do
Hmm.
it like this is your
Hmm.
first life, which it is.
Hmm.
And so that
Mhm. Mhm.
cup of coffee that I drink every single day. Well, no, this is my first and only first cup of coffee
Hmm.
on Monday, the 17th of May.
Hmm.
This walk that
Hmm.
I'm doing, it's the first
Mhm.
walk where the wind is exactly like this and it's this
Hmm.
temperature outside. And
Mhm.
this perspective
Mhm.
that I gained from the most
Mhm.
rambunctious
Mhm.
7-year-olds
Mhm. Mhm.
has
Mhm.
just been life changing. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's something that I think I'm going to hold on to for the rest of my life because it creates this novelty to life, which
Yes.
I have never
Yes.
experienced before.
Yeah. The word that keeps coming to my mind is being contentment. And when you're in a slower pace of life, the rural life, you become content. Because like you said, you have to find the beauty in the simple things. And in the United States, we all are about like, okay, what's new, what's shiny, next iPhone, next this, next that. um, but that doesn't, but contentment is really, really important. So I'm really glad. I think that, yeah, that lesson that you have, you're going to keep that with you for a really long time. I know we're getting deep on this podcast right now, but hey, that's what happens sometimes when you do Fulbright. You have time to think about the deep things in life. But Kelly, from your experience working with numerous Fulbrighters, what are some unexpected lessons do you see people bringing back from their time abroad? Or maybe even a lesson that you brought back from your own journey?
Yeah. Um, Going off of Kate, I was also in a very southern, small Brazilian city, right on the border of Uruguay and Brazil. So I really had to take the moment to appreciate the small things, like
Mhm.
things close in the middle of the day for people to go home for lunch from 12 to 2. So there's some adjustments there. And that just speaks to the adaptability Fulbrighters have in
Mhm.
terms of being placed in a new environment. It really forces you to like slow down and listen more carefully and interact more intentionally with the people around you because
Mhm.
um, there's just so much to take in. And I think a moment and a lesson that really brought it back to me was when I was coming back from a trip from Uruguay. I had to make a connection in a city maybe 2 hours from my host city, but I missed the connection, sadly. And it was like nearing midnight where I was almost stranded in a city that I was not familiar with. And I had to figure it out. And luckily, I had a student who is from that city. So I like reached out and texted her like, hi, is there any way I could like stay at your family's house for this night while I catch
Help
the
me.
next bus? Yeah. And thankfully, and she was home. So she like picked me up at the bus stop that I was like stranded at and took me
What?
home. I remembered I was like, oh wow, this is like they welcomed me with no hesitation. They were like, yeah, sure. Like here's a bed, like everything. And they fed me dinner at like midnight. And I think that moment really was like something I truly won't forget because it really taught me that asking is not a sign of weakness at all. Asking for help, asking for support. I always found it as something to be like, oh, I'm showing that I don't know or I can't do something on my own. But really, that took me a moment to appreciate just that people are willing to help. And it's part of building that mutual connection and relationships with others.
It's really powerful. And for a lot of our first and second gen students, that ability to ask those questions and overcome that feeling of like, oh, can I ask this is big. And so the fact that you got to experience like, hey, had you not asked, I guess you would have been sleeping on the street. I don't know.
Exactly.
So
I was in tears on the side of the road. Yeah, it was.
Oh man, I can imagine the elation of like, oh my God, you were home. You can pick me up. You answered the phone. Like, please, yes, whisk me away from this. Kate, I want to kind of come back to you and talk a little bit about identity. As someone with Thai heritage and American upbringing, what has it been like navigating identity in Thailand, especially regarding how the locals perceive you? Because I think that, you know, Fulbright Lotus, which we're going to talk a little bit about later, but it's just, there's a lot of nuance that isn't really discussed in the beginning of Fulbright. So can you share with us a little bit about identity, being in Thailand, having Thai heritage, American upbringing, all of that?
Yeah. Just for the viewers, the listeners, I was born in Thailand, but moved to America when I was around 10. So I've got really a mix of both. It's complicated. It's really complicated, especially because I'm very white passing but I feel very connected to my Thai heritage here. And so I always never felt completely American in Thailand. And I think a lot of people who are American AAPI, they feel this kind of drawn into two different worlds. And so being here, their first assumption will be white, foreigner, can't speak Thai. And then the second I open my mouth and speak Thai, it's kind of a complete 180, almost said 360, 180. And it's almost like, oh, you couldn't possibly be white then. You must be Thai because you sound like this. And so it's this weird thing I'm juggling of, well, I can't choose, right? I can't really choose which one I want to be. But that being said, it has been so enlightening to be here as an adult because I think that's so different. There are such small things that I thought set me apart in America, like these little baby hairs, they never grow. And I always thought it was super weird. Or the way I refer to myself in the third person sometimes, I've found out that that's because of the Thai language. And just giggling at everything, that's part of the Thai culture. And all these things that I never would have realized, not necessarily are normal, but come from this culture that I grew up in and I didn't realize I was adapting to. It's all made sense now. And it's been so eye-opening and like a weight has been lifted off of my chest because as someone with this heritage, I finally feel like I'm connecting to this second part of my identity. And that being said, I mean, I think Asian Americans have a very different time here in Southeast Asian countries on the Fulbright because there is a glorification of foreigners to an extent in these countries. And so when you come here and your entire cohort prior to you was white passing, blonde, just not someone that you identify with, you don't hear this perspective of, okay, you're going to have a different experience. You might not get treated completely the same. They might not glorify you in the way that others have experienced, and that's okay. That's just another thing that you're going to have to adapt to. And that's not to say that being an Asian American is going to give you a worse experience. In no way do I mean that. I think it's so special to feel this sense of community here in Asia, in Thailand specifically. I'm rambling.
No, you're definitely not rambling. I think this is a really important topic that needs to be discussed even more. How would a person that's just new coming over there that is AAPI heritage or background, what tips would you give them for being able to have a successful time as a Fulbrighter in a Southeast Asia country? Yeah.
Reach out to others that you think you would identify with. I mean, my cohort, I'm really lucky. There's a handful, not the majority, but there's a handful of AAPI in this cohort. And so we really found unity within all of our experiences because a lot of them were very similar. And we're talking Korean Americans, Vietnamese Americans, Thai American. I mean, all of us are just sharing these experiences. And I would say if your own cohort doesn't have a Asian American that you think you could really relate to, reach out to another country, a prior Fulbrighter. There's a lot of
Fulbright Lotus.
Exactly. Fulbright Lotus. Great plug right there. But like there is somewhere that you can reach out. And I think having those conversations to know that you're not alone in this is so nice to feel understood.
Yeah. No, and I think the one other question I want to have about this is kind of if you can talk about kind of what your headspace was like what were the barriers that you were trying to overcome in your mind while you were there regarding like identity and maybe you don't have the words for it, but kind of what were the things that were going through your mind that you were like, okay, I'm struggling with this or grappling with this during your time there, coming from these two different worlds?
Yeah. The hardest part was probably, let me just paint it out. I show up, everyone's like, oh my gosh, foreign teacher, so much fun, so cool. I speak Thai. Oh, she's not novel. She's not new. She's Thai. Like that's, she's Asian, no big deal. And so when that happened, I was really kind of fending on my own. So why would someone reach out to me if the assumption is that I have all the tools necessary to make my own friends, to know what temple to go to, what national holidays there are. And so I'm still standing here saying, I have no idea what this culture is really like. But there was this assumption that since you can speak, since you maybe were born here, you must be able to do it on your own. And so I wasn't receiving that kind of help that a lot of my other peers were receiving, which was very, very frustrating. And it goes back to me, what I was saying earlier about be annoying, ask for help. It's okay. And what Kelly was saying earlier, like, it's okay to reach out and really just say, I need your help on this because I don't know what's going on. I live as far away as possible. And I've never been here before. So that was just the main issue, honestly.
Your advice is to ask for support, ask for help. And also anything else that you would say, like someone that is going through this type of moment, what else could they do?
You're given 6 free therapy sessions. That actually helped me a lot.
Okay. Yeah, this is good. This is real. No, I'm serious.
Guys, take use of it. If you're there in Fulbright, I mean, I don't know about other countries, but we are given 6 free therapy sessions, and it's with a UK company. So it's fun to listen to your therapist talk. I'll say that.
Yeah. That's therapeutic.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, just reach out, use the resources that are available, and just know it happens. And there are other people going through the same thing, and you're not alone on it.
So I think what we're unpacking and talking about here is really important. and something people should know about so that when it does happen to them, they're not like, whoa, what is this? How did I get here? You're like, oh yeah, I knew this was coming. And these are some of the tools that I'm going to use. It's awesome. They have the therapy sessions. I'm going to reach out to Fulbright Lotus or whatever organization or people in another cohort or something like that to process it through. So I really do appreciate you sharing that, Kate, with us. Because I know you're still in it. So it's not going away, but I think it's a really important conversation. And for you, Kelly, like reflecting on your own Fulbright story, what advice would you give to students who come from multicultural backgrounds and may be unsure where they fit in abroad? Because you were in Brazil, so that's kind of like a different perspective, I guess. But like any advice that you would give to students?
I was in southern Brazil where there's a lot of German and Italian ancestry there, right? Their heritage goes back to Eastern European places. So I definitely stood out, knowing like I am Vietnamese American and don't have any features that they see on the TVs or on the movies screens. So for me, I think I really embraced my identity there more so than I do here. Like I grew up going to Vietnamese school and learning about my culture that way. So I took my opportunity in Brazil to like really showcase my family's heritage and because I don't think anyone in my city ever met someone Vietnamese American before. They always assume any Asian person is of Japanese descent because they have the largest Japanese population outside of Japan living in Brazil. In Sao Paulo specifically, but I wasn't anywhere near there, but they just assume that. So in that way, I brought like my culture to the town so the supplemental project I did was teaching Vietnamese traditional dance. I danced in college with my Vietnamese Student Association. So I had weekly workshops to teach them how to ribbon dance. And I also was able to like bring my Asian Vietnamese culture to them by hosting like Asian food bingo during AAPI month in May, because I didn't even know AAPI month was a thing. So just showcasing it in that way really helped me talk about my identity.
Yeah. This is, I just feel like this conversation, guys, about identity, it's so deep and so rich. And you are right, Kelly, like when you're talking about different cultures viewing identity differently. So when we're coming, and this is the part of the whole mutual understanding part, we're coming with our background and our thought, and then we're learning a different culture and their identity and how they see identity is very different. There's going to be some like, what is this? I'm not sure. And how do you work through that? And so I just love that you leaned into your culture and just said, okay, these are things that we do, and let me show you that. And that the culture was accepting of that. But this idea about identity, it's real. It's so interesting. And so, Kelly, I think it would be a great time right now to tell us more about the Fulbright Lotus program specifically, and what gap was it created to fill?
Yeah, of course. So the Fulbright Lotus is an affinity group, and it was created in 2019 to build a stronger sense of community for Asian and Asian American Fulbrighters through mentorship, advocacy, and even programming. And it was co-founded by Tan Mai and Amika Rapadas. And this originally came out because when Tan returned home from her Fulbright in Belgium, she reflected on some overtly racist experiences, and she wanted to have a space where she could share and maybe even talk about some things that only Asian Americans or Asians experience abroad. And that kind of came up to be the support network that we now create today. And since then, the program has like really grown. We connect with current grantees and applicants to get the word out about Fulbright, because a lot of grantees are not from our background. They don't know about it, or it's not in their path or career path that they plan to have. And then it also creates a space that we even have here to talk about identities and like the conversations that not a lot of people feel comfortable talking about, but is important to talk about. So we try to have a space to uplift AAPI voices and within the broader Fulbright community too. So overall, I think it's just an organization that shares experiences and makes it known that you're not alone in some of these stories abroad.
Yeah. And I love how your founders were just like, you know what, we've experienced this, but we don't want others to feel alone
Yeah.
in this process. So we want to create something that's safe to have these really real discussions that you do have. You're going to have them. It's not, you can't avoid it. It will happen because you're in a different place and you need a group of people to be able to process it with and not, I know we use the word safe space or whatever, but there's sometimes when you're talking with people processing things and you are harmed in the conversation where you're just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting your response to be that. And that's just, no, like, I need this space. And so can you share with us maybe an example of someone who's gone through the Fulbright Lotus journey?
Yeah. So we try to help in all different stages, right?
Okay.
Obviously, we have from the time the application opens, we try to help get the word out that it is open and that we want more AAPI applicants to apply just in general. So last year we held office hours during the summer to like either review some applications or even just talk about it because some people didn't even know about it. So they just popped in and talked to some of our members about their experiences and things like that. But then while abroad, we offer a mentorship program where grantees can be paired with a mentor who's already either done it in their country or has similar interests in professional or personal goals. And that's a way to ask really like things that maybe come about that you haven't experienced before that you could ask someone who has had maybe a similar experience to get advice on what to do or how to handle a situation. And we have 2 cycles for that for the fall and spring because there are Fulbrighters that leave throughout the year at different times of the years because the schooling system around the world is a little different. Like I mentioned, I left for my grant in February while most grants start in September. So we try to cater for both of those. And then once you return, we hope you guys stay in our network, right, of alumni and people we could reach out to. And we do that by hosting some networking events and career development panels. We actually have one coming up tomorrow called Life After Fulbright. So
cool.
This is like an event for some recent alumni who came back and are looking on what to do after your grant because I think sometimes a transition after you come back from abroad is the hardest. The reverse culture shock you see because you have this like abundance of knowledge and things that you want to share, and you're like coming back to not reality in a way, but something that might seem a little different than when you left. So we try to hit the populations in all different parts of the process, like whether you're looking at applying or abroad now and then coming back.
Yeah, no, I think this is really great. And I would love the links to reaching out to you guys. We're going to drop those in the show notes. It's wonderful to hear like the mentorship and just having people be able to help you throughout the process and then ultimately resulting in a job or like, okay, maybe you want to consider this or that. And that's, I think, all wonderful, the work that you guys are doing. And so for you, Kate, like as someone who's currently in the field, right? You're still there. You are currently a Fulbrighter. How important do you think what Kelly just talked about would have been helpful for you?
Can I sign up now? It sounds fabulous. No, I think that having Fulbright Lotus as a resource would have been just so, it would have changed the trajectory of what I experienced here in Thailand by so much, because to have a space that's dedicated to these conversations, not trying to scope out people in your cohort who maybe are feeling the same way, or hey, like, are you uncomfortable? And they look at you like, no, I'm having the time of my life. And I'm like, never mind. I'm so sorry. To have a space that's dedicated to those conversations would have been so helpful. And I mean, it's a resource that is there, so it's easily accessible when you think you need it, or even preemptively if you think, okay, I'm going to this country, like, what should I be prepared for? Like you said, Jerica, these are things that are inevitable. They're just going to happen when you move. to a foreign country, to a new culture, it's going to happen. And I mean, this resource would have been so helpful, and I can't wait to share it with my cohort.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I am really happy and grateful that you guys came on the show to share with us not only about Fulbright, but also about the Fulbright Lotus program. And so before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice you'd each give to someone listening who might be thinking, could Fulbright be for me? What would you say to them?
Kelly, your turn.
Okay,
You're
I'll
up,
take a
Kelly.
shot at this. Yeah. My first advice, I have a couple, but I think my first is to not self-reject in terms of thinking and talking yourself out of applying before you even get started. I think taking the first step in talking to someone who's done it and doing the research is already a great step in the right direction, because you might be more qualified and ready than you think you are. For me, I thought I was like very scared of rejection, so I was hesitant in applying, but I realized you actually gain a lot in just going through the application process, because your writing improves, you are better able to tell your narrative and your story, and I personally learned how to articulate what I want and how I want it, and I think that is really invaluable, because it pushed me to connect the dots of where I want to be and how to get there. So even if you don't get Fulbright in your first try, I think you still will learn a lot in the process itself. It's a form of growth. So I'll leave it at that for that one.
Yeah. Okay, so for you, Kate, could Fulbright be for me? What would you say?
Yes. Just yes. I think if you're curious about it, go for it. I think if it's on your radar, there is a reason for that. And like Kelly said, don't self-reject. I mean, look into it, see if it's the right thing for you. But if you're even a little bit curious, go and check out the webpage, because you don't have to have everything in control. So if you're curious about it, please just try it out, see what you think, and look into it.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your stories, for introducing our audience to Fulbright Lotus and the insights today. Listeners, if today's conversation sparked something in you, please reach out to Fulbright Lotus on social media. I'm going to link their information below. And then, as always, be kind to yourself, because the world needs who you were made to be. I'll see you guys on the next episode.